When a judge sentenced child killer Penny Boudreau to life in prison, no chance of parole for 20 years, most people felt that now for the first time it would be possible for everyone, family, friends, the community of Bridgewater, to move on. And for the most part, that process is underway for the many, many people who loved and cared for Penny Boudreau's 12-year-old victim, her daughter Karissa. Except for Vernon Macumber. Macumber is the former boyfriend of Penny Boudreau, a man who has told us he's unable to put the past behind him without first addressing some key issues in the present. Mr. Macumber agreed to be interviewed in our CTV studios. Here is that interview. Tell me a little bit about your feelings around this whole issue of what people think of you. And by that I mean there is a public perception that you must have known or you must have played a part in Karissa's murder. I know, it was very hurtful. I mean, I was devastated myself. It broke my heart, especially to have a terrible thing like this happen. It just was hard on me. People thought I'd done something, and I had to live with that. Even with the work, I had to leave Bridgewater, and because people had their opinions about me. And I've had it affected me trying to get a job as well down here. Every time I applied for a place or something, they knew about what went on, and they had their own decision about that, right? So I had a hard time getting work as well. And it's just been, I couldn't say anything. I couldn't talk to anybody, because I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And just to go through that alone was just a nightmare. Do you understand, though, maybe why people might have had that perception, or why the community maybe had those feelings? I can see how it would affect them too, but I'm the type of person, I don't judge. I'd be careful how I judge, because you can be so wrong about somebody, and that happens a lot. So talk a little bit more about what happened to you. I mean, when this all happened, of course, anybody, I drank. That's the only way I could cope with it. I started drinking a lot. And that's what I did to survive. I'm going for, I had to get some help with that. And it's just, to have people think bad of you when you didn't do anything, going through the whole thing. Except you were living with the mother of this child. Yeah, and living with Penny, if she tells you that it didn't do nothing, you got to try to believe somebody, right? You got to at least be there for them. You just can't, walk away from them, especially her going through this, and I believed her. Well, that's what I want to talk just a little bit more about. The day of, Karissa's murder. Yeah. Just walk me through some of that. What sort of day was that? It was, well, they were going to have a talk, right? They were going to have a powwow. Talk to some questions about her attitude, right? So they were just going to talk and go out and have a sub or something like they normally did. They went out for a drive like mother and daughter, and I stayed home because I had worked the night before. I worked a night shift and worked into the 12 in the afternoon. So I stayed home and had a beer and watched TV and went to bed, lay down through the afternoon when they left. And it was like another day. I asked them, would you like me to go with you? No, it was okay. And that's the way it was. It was just like a normal day. Until, she tried to call me to let me know that Karissa jumped out of the car. And I was still... Is that what she said? Karissa jumped out of the car? Yeah, that's what she said. She went into Sobeys, and when she came out, she was gone. And that's all, and I couldn't understand, myself. It was heartbreaking. It just seemed like another day to me. So then Penny came home. Then what? And then she came home and told me, Chris, like frantically, said, Chris jumped out of the car. And I said, well, kids, I said, she's just probably walking home. That's what I thought, she'd just walk home and, cool off. And then when we, around 7 o'clock, I made sure we got to call the police and report this, because, 12 years old. I was worried about her. Do you remember the news conference? Because I remember your face at the news conference. You almost looked as though you were in disbelief or shock. I thought you had a very strange look on your face. It was just, I just didn't know what to do. It was just such a horrible nightmare it was like a bad dream unfolding. And I just didn't know what to do, to be there for Penny and the rest of the family too, but you felt that the eyes were on you, and that's the way I felt, though, that they were looking at me like I've done something. But why did you tell her to make that choice? You said, you know, it's either Karissa or me.
No, actually I didn't. Actually I said, because they were fighting quite a bit. And I asked them, you know, you have to do something about this. Is not a productive family when they're arguing and fighting. And I could come home and hear them screaming and hollering, right, as I was coming up the stairs. So I knew they, you know, and I was new in their family, so I thought, well, when we all sit down, we're going to see a counselor or something. That's what I wanted to, you know, because to show a kid that, because she's going through a rough time where the divorce was, right? So, you know, that's why I mentioned that. Something had to be done with their fighting, because it got so it was not constructive of the family, right? It was just all the time in the mornings, and, you know, and I'd come home and hear them arguing, and so that's basically what it was about.
So when you were sitting beside her that day in the news conference,
I just want to tell you that
you really didn't know, you had no idea
No,
at that point?
I had no idea. I had no idea. I just believed her. I really was in love with Penny. You know, I fell in love with her, and Karissa too. I mean, she was a sweetheart. She always used to make me laugh.
Who, Karissa did?
Yes, she did. She always made me laugh. She'd hear my feet coming up the stairs, and when I'd come in, she'd open the door, 11 o'clock, she'd go, boo! And I said, they took 2 years off my life, right? But she was, you know, just a typical kid. You know, typical 12-year-old.
There's also stories about the two of you partying, doing drugs, drinking. You know.
Well, now I had a beer after work. I mean, I love to sit down after work and have a beer or two, but as far as the partying and stuff like that, that's not true. That's far from the truth. If we were drinking, it was to drink your sorrows. I mean, because you just couldn't deal with it.
For you?
For me.
So you were drinking quite heavily during that time?
Oh, absolutely. I drank really hard. And it's just to seem to, you know, because I was just trying to stay numb. Because it was so hard this whole situation. You really can't, unless you've been there. And you go through it yourself, and then you realize, you know, the tragedy of it. You know, now we're mother. That's a tragedy there. It's a nightmare.
Were you scared?
Oh, terrified. Absolutely. Nothing worse than having somebody think that you harmed a child, or the police, you know, blaming you for that. You know, I know they had to get to the truth, but that's the terrifying feeling, to be locked up for something you didn't do. You knew you were